y'all, and welcome back to my channel. Today I am reviewing a brand that I do absolutely love reviewing because so many of their products just speak to me on an aesthetic and on a quality level. Y'all would have seen on Snapchat just like totally randomly being all like, well, I guess I ordered the Melt Cosmetics Muerte and Vida palettes. I mean, we're just gonna have to talk aesthetics right off the bat. I mean, this is absolutely visually stunning. I mean, like I said on said Snapchat, Kat Von D wishes she was this solid. And if you wanted me to talk about kind of like brands that have replaced or are replacing Kat Von D, let me know down below because I feel like that would be a fun video to do. But we have two palettes here. They do have the cute little like I don't know if that's like because they're magnetic closure or if they're actually meant to do this cute little clicky thing. But you have that there. I mean, this has everything going for it. And it was a whole ding dang collection. They had a highlighter, they had 3 liquid lipsticks, which were similar to the ones that came out in that radioactive collection. I wasn't a big fan of the formula, so I skipped on that. Then they had cream eyeliners. I was just, the rest of the collection, maybe the highlighter, but the majority what I really wanted and to review were the palettes. And also, as you all know, money don't grow on trees, and this is 2020 gonna be a low buy for your girl. But we have them right here. This one is the Vida, which is going on right here. All kinds of beautiful, gorgeous red, orangey, yellow, green, neutrally bright grunge mix of both. And then the Muerte, which is definitely much more deep, decadent, kind of reminiscent to like stained glass and all that gorgeousness. They are $58, which is very pricey. Melt Cosmetics have been pretty consistent with their pricing, and they are kind of on that higher end of the spectrum, but thus far I find that their palettes pretty much warrant the price because they're a really great formula. Although I will say we will be talking today about maybe a little bit of inconsistency and a little bit of repetitiveness, which I understand is kind of subjective because not everybody has all the palettes. But for someone who does already own certain palettes that have already existed for Melt Cosmetics, these might be just a little bit in the redundant category, and I feel it behooves me to discuss as someone who doesn't or as someone who does so we can cover all the areas. But first things first, let's just get into swatching them. I will admit that I am only wearing 3 shades from this palette on my eyes today. I started off with Papel Picado, just all up and over. And then on my lid right here, I have Serape. And then I took a little bit of Alegria right here. And then on my inner cora is Calaca right here. But the rest of the deepening up and definition was my Viseart Ultimate Master Pro something Volume 3. So with that out of the way, let us swatch Vida right here, which is most definitely the brighter. I mean, just everything about this, the aesthetic, just, it is thematically beautiful. And like always when I'm swatching palettes, I'm wearing long sleeves because I'm a moron and it's like 30 something degrees outside. The weather went like 60 to 30 real quick. But first off right here is Serape, which is not a typical melt shimmer, I feel. Like, let me just show you this one right here. Like, it's very hard pressed. It is that thicker, more emollient formula that I am used to from Melt, but it's a lot harder pressed. And this one, which one thing that I do like about it is, I don't know if you can tell, but it's got like, yeah, you can't tell in that swatch at all. It's got like a hint of sparkle, a little extra something that goes twinkle twinkle on your eyelids, which I am a fan of. Next up is Papel Picado. Then we have Amor Eterno. I apologize for mi español. Like I said, I took 4 years and have retained un poco. And then Agua Ardiente, which I really like that shade going on there. customary to melt mattes. They are very pigmented. Although I must admit that I find this particular batch a little bit fainter, a little bit patchier, not as like one color opacity going on. Next up is chocolate, which I think that's how you say it in Espanol. And then atole right here, which is beautiful feeling. And then sol, which is this bright orange. Going on here. There we go. Then last but not least, pan dulce, or dolce, probably dolce. Alegria right here, which is another, it is nowhere near as like hard pressed as the Serape shade. I would say that this is very typical to the shimmers in the 27 palette, the Gemini, and the Smoke Sessions palettes. And then we have Mexicana, which is this beautiful, like just woo, fire engine red. And here we have those last ones right there. I would say that these last ones here are probably like, these ones kind of and then the pigmentation kind of gets gradually more, but kind of in the same vein as these two here. This red does tend to get a lot more patchier. It is not the easiest red to blend, especially if you want to blend it over top of something else. Definitely more of a patting motion red than it is a like swipey. So obviously you want to keep that sort of thing in your mind when thinking about what to invest in. Now we're going to go into Muerte right here, going on like this. I do love the matte to shimmer ratio. I believe you had 2 shimmers in the Vida palette and you're getting 3 here. Because you all know the backbone of a palette is built upon its mattes. So we're going to start off with Angelito right here, which is kind of like that green shade in the first one where it is more hard pressed and not so much showing up on the swatch, but it is going to have that kind of like sparkle factor to it, where if you don't set down like a tacky primer or like a shadow base, glitter glue, etc., you're gonna get more of that like glittery shimmeriness rather than this complete opaque. Then Lagrimas right here, which is a beautiful like jade shade, and then Duelo, which I will say when it comes to the melt formula, and this is true of any of the palettes I've tried from them, the darker the shade, the grittier and the more fallouty it gets. And then Pantheon right here. I mean, yeah, kind of sandpapery and lots of fallout. So I'm just gonna put this one for the sake of space up here, looking all kinds of matchy. And then this one, they feel very smooth on swatching. Like when you go in on the pan, it feels gritty, but then when you go to do the swipey, it's smooth and buttery. Next up is Noche Eterna. I'm so bad. Then Katrina, which is once again, like I said, you've got that more harder pressed, fallouty, whatever with shimmery, shiny, something. Then Velorio. The beautiful, deep, dark, decadent red. Got this going on here, and here. Then last but not least, Sangre. Right there, Corazon, and Calaca, which, like the orangey red shade, you know, it's more of a looser pressed, more typical Melt Cosmetics shimmer. We have these going on here. Going on there. Okay, so typically in my reviews, we kind of address the quality right off the bat before getting into more of like the whole, well, you know, this color is similar and this color, you know, and from like a practical sense of like, well, the quality may be good, but do you really need these colors, or do you need them in this conjunction, etc., etc. And unfortunately, at least for me, for my experience, my skill level, I thought that quite of the few shades in both of these palettes were rather inconsistent compared to what I'm used to dealing with Melt Cosmetic shadows and their formulas. Like, for example, Papel Picado is like a really pretty shade. It does take a lot to build up. Amor Eterno is kind of in the same vein. If you're just kind of going on that first swipe, they can tend to be a little bit patchy. I had absolutely no problem with Agua Ardiente or Chocolate or Atole right here, these neutrals here. They were fine, blended well over other shadows, blended well into each other, were pigmented, smooth, all that jazz. Mexicana, while being very pigmented, I did find it difficult to blend, and kind of when I did go into the blending, like I'd lay it down and I'd be like, okay, we gotta buff out those edges. It would kind of buff out the color while I was buffing out the edges, so there was a lot of like reapplying and buffing and reapplying and blending and being gentler and just all sorts of ways trying to maintain that color while also making a nice smooth line. Allegra, beautiful, gorgeous, typical melt shimmer. Although this one is not a typical melt shimmer, I do think it is very beautiful, and I know it's a shade that I am going to be reaching for when I do said green looks or green and pink, etc. Sol and Pan Dolce, they're pretty good. Kind of like these shades, you know, you got to build them up a little bit. They're not like first swipe pigmentation city. And they kind of, you know, once again, suffered from that not necessarily wanting to lay over other colors, kind of diffusing and piffing out into the atmosphere. And then we have Muerte. Now, right off the bat, I absolutely love Lagrimas. This shade is absolutely stunning. Pigmented, smooth, buttery, does all that jazz. Angelito is also very, very beautiful. Katrina, oh my goodness, she is like, oh, Fallout City. Like, you are getting pigment flecks, you are getting glitter flecks, everything all up in this area right here. Calaca, while being pretty, I had kind of high hopes for it being similar to the Kat Von D Thunder Metal Crush Shadow and Thunderstruck, but it's really chunky and doesn't really have as much zhuzh as I would like it to. And then, like, okay, Duelo and Panteon, oh, desperately trying to remember 4 years of Spanish. All of these other darker shades, Sangre, not so much, but they're like really hard to blend. And I don't know if that's because I suck at makeup. I always try to be very transparent with you all because I am not like level 3000 cut crease goddess. I would say I'm like above beginner, intermediate, like I've got the basics and everything like that, but I ain't doing no cut creases, I ain't doing no crazy fancy graphic eyeliner or nothing. But even with that, I would like to think that I could blend out a shadow. And I understand the darker the shade, the harder to formulate, the more difficult in blending and all that jazz, but I just didn't find that they did what I was hoping they would do compared to, like I keep saying, the other Melt Cosmetics shadows and formulas I've tried in the past, which, you know, they've got darker shades. The black in the, I believe it's the Gemini palette, or if it's not a black, that deepest shade in there, one of my favorite deepening, deep, dark colors to, you know, deepen up a look. That's one of my favorites. I did not find that these really did that. So there was just kind of this inconsistency of which ones were like super pigmented, which ones were patchy, which ones didn't want to blend. I just kind of had a bit of a struggle. And like I said, I always try to be all like, you know, well, it could be me. I could just suck. Because experience is relative to your skill level sometimes. There's some shades in here that I do absolutely love, even though these 3 shades in the Vida palette are a little bit more work. I still think they're absolutely gorgeous. Like I said, I do love this Lagrimas shade right here. It goes really well with this Sangre shade, which luckily seems to blend pretty well. And this shimmer, you know, it was just, the whole experience was kind of back and forth for me. It wasn't a like straight up consistent, yay, everything is amazing, or everything sucked. It was just very middle ground and kind of like a little disappointing because some of the shades didn't work, but some of the shades you're like, wow, this is great. So it's like, Then obviously we've basically got to talk about the fact that the Vida palette is, I feel, the best of palettes they've already released. Kind of like 27 going on into Gemini. Got the radioactive palette here. Absolutely love this. And I understand they are different, but I'm like, oh look, a bright orange, oh look, a green, oh look, a yellow. You know, and then we've got this here where it's like, okay, that over there, that over there. You know, there's a lot of similarities, especially I don't have them with me, they're in Tennessee, but I will insert pictures of Gemini and 27 right here. Or like I said, it looks like they kind of took the best of both of them and formulated this color theory, which I'm totally okay with, and I would be really great with to kind of have, you know, the highlights of both of those in this if the formula was consistent. But it's not, and that makes me very sad inside. This is definitely something I would not say go out and buy right now. Apparently it is sold out on their site. If they're gonna carry it in Sephora or whatever, or you have an opportunity to swatch it, I would definitely recommend that before just going on in. Maybe it's just the two that I got, but for some reason, these shadows did not work consistently, like the Melt palette, the Gemini, why did I say Melt? 27, Gemini, Radioactive, Smoke Sessions, all that jazz. I just didn't seem to find the same level of consistent quality. Obviously, I'm gonna play around with them even more, and I will keep you all updated. But for right now, it's just, I'm not blown away. The aesthetic and the colorways are very beautiful. I think it is a gorgeously planned out palette, especially this one. It's a very unique, deeper, darker, more decadent color story than I feel like we've seen on the market. And while even though this one may be, you know, like I said, kind of a rehash of already existing whatevers, it's a really pretty rehash. It's just disappointing that a lot of the shades were hit and miss for me. But obviously that is just me opinion. For any of y'all who speak the Spanish and all that jazz, I apologize for making you suffer through that. Obviously, let me know what y'all think down below. I know quite a few of you did end up purchasing both of those palettes and some other things from the collection. Let me know if I'm just crazy and if I just suck at makeup and don't know how to blend out a deep shadow. That being said, this deepness is the Viseart, and I think I blended that somewhat okay. But experience is relative. Thank you guys so much for watching. I love you, and as always, keep it real. Mwah!